Welcome to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Miley, an IFS-informed certified trauma recovery coach. This show features interviews from survivors all over the world as they share their impactful story of thriving in their post-traumatic growth. We explore resources, tools, and coping skills to support the trauma survivor community. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Miley, and we have with us today Desireé English. And Des is a senior trainer and a GERI director of training. GERI stands for Gender Equity and Reconciliation International. So she sits on the chair of the Board of GenderWorks, which is GERI's affiliate in South Africa. She spent most of her 25-year career creating and holding spaces for learning and development for individuals and groups, including the local government, corporations, and NGOs. As an integrative trauma healing practitioner and independent learning and development consultant, Desireé is strongly grounded in her purpose of facilitating healing and empowerment within communities, especially working with women and youth. She's highly skilled with background and expertise in human resources. She applies this experience to project management, program development, and implementation of strategic planning. Des, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate having you on to discuss these important topics. So tell us a little bit more of how you've gotten here. 25 years, you have a very, very long career. A little bit about how you've gotten into GERI and what is it to be an integrative trauma healing practitioner? I love that word. So I'm really interested to hear, how did you get here?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, so much for the invitation, and I'm really happy to be with you and to share with you a little bit more about what I do. So I have been in people development my entire career, so facilitation and training and that kind of thing, and then started recognizing how very drawn I am to it. So it was more than just teaching people a different skill or a new program that they may be interested in. So having spent my time in starting in training and facilitation, feeling very drawn to the impact that it has on people's lives, and that it's more than just teaching someone a new skill or a new knowledge of a new product or a process. So I was really began to be drawn to the people side and connecting with people, and also discovering that not just an interest, I have a passion, and it's something that I really enjoy doing. And then at some point in my career, I was in human resources management, and then I felt the call to step out of that into youth development, which was really, really empowering for me, particularly in the context here in South Africa, working with young people from previously disadvantaged areas, young people who do not have any opportunity for further studies and even job opportunities, working in a youth development program that provide a basis for learning and growth, personal leadership, and then to step into opportunities. And so that's where really my connection came with working in trauma healing, because at the academy where I was working, we needed to really support close to 200 young people at a time on a program with a very small team, one social worker. And so the CEO of the academy, very, very progressive, forward-thinking, really heart-centered and healing-centered. We came across a particular healing modality, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And so the importance of having an integrated approach to healing. So it's empowering. It is with awareness. It is trauma-informed, but healing-centered, looking at the whole person, and not just focusing maybe on one particular experience that the person may have had that was traumatizing and impacting their lives. And then when I kind of grew into that for a few years, felt very strongly drawn to working with women. And so moving on from the academy, then started working independently on my own. And working with organizations, and most of my clients are women, individual clients. When I do group work, it is with women. And I've been working with nonprofit organizations who work in various sectors, empowering women. And I have the opportunity to introduce this particular modality that I am trained and certified in, and I'm also a certification trainer, called TRE, trauma release exercise. And so with that, the practice of self-regulation, of breathing, of self-care tools, and regularly practicing it with people to empower them. So it's not just about making the person or the group as a client or clients kind of dependent on what as a practitioner I offer, but it's really to empower them, that it's things that they can do for themselves. And also teaching them that when they as an individual are calmer and grounded, the impact that it has with people, with their children around them. And that's kind of the magic part, when they realize that it's not so much what I can do outside of myself to help others, but the healing process actually starts with me doing my own work, connecting with what is my story and what has impacted my life, and then developing, skills and practices to take care of me. Because when my nervous system calms down and settles into a calm and grounded state, magic happens. The children become calmer and quieter, and people around me not having done anything. And so that's part of the beauty of that empowerment story. And then while I was at the academy, one of the areas of work with the young people that we wanted to integrate was in the space of gender diversity and inclusion and equity. And then we came across the work of Gender Equity and Reconciliation International. And as one of the ways, we would never do something or introduce something to the students if, as a staff team, as a management team, we have not experienced ourselves. Right. And so as the instructors and the trainers and staff, we had our first workshop in 2014, which was really, really transformative for me. It was life-changing for me, with my particular story of having grown up with an alcoholic and abusive father, and having witnessed as a young girl the impact that it has had on me, witnessing him, beating my mom and having a very violent way of punishing us as children. And only having done, and still in the process of doing my own healing work, could I go back and understand and have, perspective of, not that the experiences that I've had, that it was okay, but I could understand now, because I understand trauma and I understand the impact that it has had. So I started training as a GERI facilitator in 2015, and have been involved in the work since, as a facilitator of the 3-day workshop process. And over the past few years have grown, not just in the facilitation of the work, but in the nonprofit organization GenderWorks here in Cape Town, kind of, taking on and supporting the work in the capacity of the chairperson of the board. Promoting the work and inviting people into the work. And of course, with COVID, brought the online revolution, and developing ways in which we can do the work online. So yeah, we've got quite a bit of the GERI work going. Facilitator trainings happening globally at the moment, but I'm happy to share more about that too.
That's excellent. It's really excellent. The transformation sounds like it really came from finding that purpose and that passion for you. And it was great, because certain things that you would say, your eyes would light up. Your
Yeah.
eyes just would change. Yeah. It was really interesting to watch you kind of notice your own personal transformation. And that's just part of everyone deciding to follow their dreams and finding their passion and finding their purpose. And I'm always grateful to meet people who are really stepping into their space where they know that they belong. And I can tell you on your face, you can see it. You can visibly see it. It's really sweet. What happens in this integrative trauma healing work that you do? So I know you talked about a couple of different modalities that you practice when you're working one-on-one, or even group. I do a bit of that myself with the trauma recovery coaching and getting into group classes and things now. But what happens when we're able to hold space for people, especially when you're in a group, right? Do you find that the other participants are learning to hold space for each other? And what's possible when we can just hold space for someone?
Oh, yeah. I think safety is such an important issue, and and it starts again, like I said earlier on, when I am safe within myself, when my nervous system is regulated in a calm and grounded state, I am able to sit with and be with whatever comes up, what I face, moment to moment, or when these big life things happen, that I can recognize it and I can stay in the moment. I don't leave my body. I can talk about it. I can give expression to the emotion. So I can, kick and scream and cry, but I do it with awareness. I do it with presence. I am right here. And when we are able to do that for ourselves, when we sit in conversation with someone else, and we offer them deep listening, we listen to them with an open heart. We listen to them with us vibrating compassion and with empathy. Then their nervous system can feel that. And so we can co-regulate. So without us needing to say clever things or needing to know a whole lot, just vibrating in our authentic, calm, grounded self, that nervous system, who's kind of treading water in survival mode, can recognize that. And I describe it almost like that nervous system connecting and taking a deep breath of connection, and they feel the safety, and almost like, okay, it's okay. It's okay to be here. I am okay. And so I can talk through, whatever modality or practice they are in, to help release and calm down the nervous system. They can go through that because they feel safe. And so the integration of a number of different ways of being and a number of different tools is what this integrated trauma healing is about. It's not just, one particular thing. It's not just hearing the details of the story that people have experienced. And the empowerment part is so important, that so instead of me being the guide that they need to depend on to tell them what to do and when to do it. It's a way of relating and asking them and checking in what is happening for them, so that almost they can go inside, do a little check, and then say, oh, I'm noticing this, or I'm feeling that. That expands their awareness about their own process, their own words that they are using. And so you don't need to analyze it, you don't need to give meaning to it, but the person can go as they say it, and as they feel it. Again, the realization happens, and the awareness expands. And so it's bringing all of those elements together in an integrative way that empowers the person as well.
Yeah, I do hear a lot of that, like, empowerment happening, right? Because so much of trauma kind of takes you away from that somatic connection, right? And so bringing more somatic awareness brings you
Mhm,
back into yourself. And that, I love the word
mhm,
expansion. That's like one of my favorite words of, just anything that you can do just to get a little bit more expansion, and expansion of perception,
mhm,
and expansion of awareness of,
mhm,
what is going on around you, and how you can, I love the co-regulation, right? I do that myself with coaching. Someone can get dysregulated right here in my presence, and that's okay, because you're talking about really difficult stuff. And when
yeah.
I stay regulated, then we're going to end up, meeting each other, and that those vibrations are
Mhm.
so important. How has the trauma impacted people in your culture, in your country? Is it
Mhm.
I guess my real question is it just all of humanity kind of responds the same, or do we find that in different cultures trauma is impacting? What kind of things are you seeing, especially with youth and women? That's a very specific niche that you're working with.
Mhm.
What is the impact that's happening there for you?
Mm. On a very quick short answer is that, trauma happens to everybody,
Mm.
and the nervous system and our beings being, designed in a particular way. There is the natural, organic trauma response. Looking at, in our context as a country, our history of discrimination, of apartheid, there is such a lot that sits intergenerationally. that even now, I mean, in our country, close to 30 years being a democracy, there's still evidence of the dysregulation and the pain and the trauma that we had experienced. And so the body, remembering everything that it had ever experienced, the responses, there's lots of fear, a lot of anxiety, and so on. If we don't have safe spaces to speak to, so physically when people are not safe, that kind of translates to not feeling safe in other areas of our lives, in relationships, in the workplace, as parents, as friends, and so on. And so particularly in our context, gender-based violence, where the economic situation, there's such a knock-on, and we experienced that in COVID, for instance. Suddenly, with being locked down, that just had this knock-on effect of increased in gender-based violence, and then the knock-on of economic trauma, people not earning money, not having a job, having lost jobs, relationships break down, there's the tension, and it's everything that the body and the being has been holding on to. This is like, the last straw on the camel's back, or the match that kind of lights the fire. And so, gender-based violence is increased. And so there's this ripple effect that is just going on and on and on, that people do experience.
Yeah. It's something like, I know that there's been numerous studies about the Holocaust and the generational trauma from there. And I'm sure apartheid is one of those things that will be studied. But right now, it's almost like it's still so close to the apartheid era that you're seeing people whose children were like in utero when it was still like, you know what I'm saying? So like that generational
Yeah.
trauma link is so important when you have had that much suffering, here in the States. With slavery, with all of the immigration and all that, couple hundred years ago. But when we think about it, that's just a couple of generations back, it was your grandmother's grandmother. But in South Africa, it was like your mom or your grandmother. It was so,
Yeah.
so close to your generation. And I love that idea of working with youth, because if they can find healing of things they don't even know what they need healed from, right? If they were in utero, they weren't even conceived or born yet, but their parents were struggling with that, there's still those fears that come down, right? That trickle effect that you talked about. And I love the idea of working with youth right now while they're still so malleable to change, and they're still open to realizing that they don't have to hold on to those things, that's where that generational curse of the generational trauma will stop, and there'll be changes coming down on the next side.
Yeah.
So you're like perfectly positioned to be working with the women who will become mothers,
Yeah.
and the youth that have already gone through that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can really appreciate that. That's beautiful. What would you say is like the biggest challenge in your work that you do?
Again, I'm coming back to safety and just the conditioning. So cultural conditioning. If I look at in South Africa, if I look at Africa, because part of the GERI work, global is spreading in Africa as well, and just learning culturally. I remember a colleague who was in the gender reconciliation work from Kenya, after a workshop, shared a reflection that, men are taught as young boys to not hear the voice of women. And so when women are confronted with challenging situations of physical, emotional, sexual violence, they know, or their resistance is not heard or seen or shut down. And I think even worse is that when girls growing up, they see this and they hear this and they don't expect to be heard. And so part of the challenge is in this work is what we really, really need to work hard at is creating safe enough spaces for people to choose to step into. So for instance, stepping into a GERI 3-day workshop with a group of strangers, and part of, in the beginning of the work that we do is creating that safety, co-creating that container together, so that they can feel, as their safety increases, that they can feel, I can speak my truth here. I can say what has been my pain and suffering and what has wounded me and how it has affected me. And I can say it in the presence of those who identify in a gender context, maybe the same as I do as a woman, as well as those who identify as men, who for me could be the perpetrators of my wounding, right? And then people who identify on, in all genders and gender expressions and identities. It's that of being safe, that I'm not judged, I will not be questioned. I don't need to be, give more details, but I can really just be fully seen and heard as I give expression to my story. So sometimes it's people maybe because they're not used to it, because there is this cultural conditioning of needing to not say. And speaking from, personal experience, the threat of violence or harm from a perpetrator to someone that they are harming is very powerful. It shuts up little children, and if you take that into your adult life, it shuts up young women. It keeps silenced women as they mature and men as they mature to never speak about their experiences. And it's safety and the power of love and compassion that breaks that, that invites them into sharing. So having safe enough spaces for people to speak and tell their stories. And I think the systems, where people are at, if people don't trust the system, if they have witnessed the system fail others, it's going to be more difficult for people to, voluntarily step into a system. So that, that is part of the challenge, as well as people not knowing what is available for them. And often resources that are made available only speaks to one part of their experience. It speaks to needing to find the guilty party, get them into the legal system, and they need to be tried and then, sentenced if there's a guilty verdict. But the other parts of those who have experienced these sexual, physical, emotional abuse and so on, the other part of the humanness, the other part of their being is not being seen to. So there isn't a balance of a whole person approach, if I can call it that, to the care, or to the justice that they need to experience. It's just the one part, and often that is too overwhelming, because the nervous system stays dysregulated in absolute survival mode, completely frozen, needing to go through the experience of the system. So people not having access to and not knowing what is available and what can work. So those are challenging. And of course, where people do not have resources, it's people who are unemployed, who are in dire economic situations, who are poor. They don't have access to, they don't have money to pay, and also part of the conditioning, when you grow up and you've been in that situation for a long time, you don't ask easily. Particularly, it has maybe become a little bit easier to ask for bread or for food or water, but those other emotional needs, those other needs of my being, I don't know how to ask. And so when I don't know how to, I will not look for, I will not be able to think of possibilities and options until I am connected with, and I feel safe enough to ask and connect with opportunities that are available, that I can slowly begin to, step into that safety and realize, oh, okay, this is also what I can do, and this is also what I need as part of the process. So it is very integrated. And so part of the way in which we work, certainly in the gender reconciliation work, is and often people may disqualify themselves. Oh, I can't afford it, I don't have money, so therefore I will not register. I will not ask. And so the way in which we hold that is in such a generous spirit that we invite people, those who can pay, they do pay. I certainly hold that way of working in the trauma healing work with nonprofit organizations that I do work. I always say that if I could do this work that I do and have all my financial needs and obligations met in a different way, I'll just happily keep on doing this. But it's obviously also finding the balance of when it is something that is your income, to balance, the service and giving versus, what do I ask for money for? Mm.
Yes, yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with that, because when you are in a position to be helping people, anytime you're in like an emotionally laborious job, like you and I are, we want to be able to give back. So, I try to
Mm.
offer sliding discounts based on income, but at the same point, like also building my own coaching business of, I also have overhead and I've got bills to pay, and there's a
Mm.
balance there, and I
Yeah.
think that there's, if following your gut, following your intuition, your instincts. So that is so beautiful. Des, you're doing amazing work. And I love that you brought up about resources and resources being so important. Trauma survivors need to know where they can go. So, what has been really helpful? Obviously, you've gone through some childhood trauma yourself. You've grown up in an era of South Africa as well, where, you being a woman and identifying as a woman, that you have your own challenges, either for personally or what you would just offer to the community. What would you say if someone is suffering, with trauma or abuse history, inequity, broken trust, having that lack of safety? What would be a good couple of places for them to start, for resources?
Mm. One of the things I would suggest is, access to the internet, on your cell phone or a computer, would actually work to ask for free resources or free emotional support, kind of words around that, and see what pops up in your area. So maybe names and contact details of organizations or people who offer services. You can make connection with. And I think one of the beautiful outcomes of that would be when you connect with one person
Mm,
and you say, this is where I'm at, I'm looking for help. Often that person can give you more connections of other resources and other people. So just kind of doing a search would work. Um, your local, kind of social development department, your community safety, your municipal, your local government organizations would have programs and structures, and even in the church, whether you at a particular organization, faith-based organization or so, they would be able to offer you support. And I think if you look at mental health practitioners and these maybe helplines, like in South Africa we have Lifeline, we have a number of nonprofit organizations doing support work. So if you connect with a social worker, if that social worker is not able to specifically help you, then what I would encourage is, I think, just the way that they work being social workers. They work with the approach that if I cannot direct you, here's a number, here's a name of a person, here's a website, a Facebook page, or something that you can go onto. And if that person maybe does not do that, then I would encourage people to ask,
mm,
reaching out for that. In the gender reconciliation work, one of the beautiful ways in which we hold this work is recognizing that, in the 3-day workshop process, people speak about what has been their pain and suffering. And one of the kind of um, things that we do is we teach people self-care tools. So we breathe a lot. We teach them just to sit with it, and we cry,
mm,
and that crying is okay, and it actually feels good afterwards, and support of one another. So that's really empowering, teaching different skills. The skill of deep listening, of being listened to, that they can experience in the process. And of course, when people have specific information about, clinical psychologists or counselors or even life coaching, it has certainly shifted, right, in terms of the focus of life coaching, where you think, it's about, setting goals and reaching the goals. The approach I have learned is also, a whole of humanity approach. It's the whole person approach that you do take into that work. So I think it's asking the question, wherever, to whomever, and if you do believe in prayer, ask your question there. If you believe in a higher power, but the power of asking, the power of saying it, in putting into words what your need is, and then to experience in beautiful ways how that can come back to you, coincidentally or in response to what you have asked for.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Asking for what you need. That's so important. I'm going to have that whole list tagged below in our show notes, as well as all your contact information. If people have questions, they want more information about GERI, if they're looking to get in touch with you, where can people find you and find more information about this organization?
Right. So I think in my in the bio, you may have put the Gender Equity and Reconciliation International, the website. Please, they can also find us on Facebook. GenderWorks as an organization in South Africa, we're on Facebook as well. Happy for you to share my email address with people if they want to know a little bit more. And on the website, there will be information of upcoming events. We do offer tasters, which is like a short introduction for people to just get a sense of what the work is about. And those are offered at no cost. If people have a question or they just want to find out more and talk, WhatsApp or email, very, very happy to share that with everyone.
Beautiful. Des English, thank you so much for joining us today and discussing this really important topic. All of that is going to be linked up below with your email address and those websites that you just mentioned as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Good to be here.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to or watching this episode of the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and follow. For any information that was discussed in this podcast episode, check out the show notes below. Until next time, be well.